Let's start then with a preliminary assessment, because the hit initially was quite a big one. More than 50% of the oil output was taken offline. How much of a loss is that for you in terms of revenue?
Thank you very much. I think the Aramco and the Minister of Energy yesterday made it very clear that we are back online. So the interruption is, in terms of economy, in terms of revenue, is zero, because we have used, as they have mentioned, our reserves only for a couple of days before we are back online last night and today.
So absolutely no impact, neither on spending or on revenue, even in the longer term as you look towards the end of the year?
Absolutely.
What about additional allocations for defense? Would that be something that you'd be looking at?
I mean, generally, if you look at our budget, as announced, there is significant allocation to all the economic sectors, but also to our needs for military, including defense. So there is no change, and we will continue spending as we need on our defense and protection.
So as we go into the latter part of 2019, you look at a world where there's increasing economic uncertainty. The numbers are showing that the world's slowing down. You have the geopolitical risks in this part of the world. You have the Fed and other central banks easing. How confident are you that you can reach your targets for growth?
I think two things. One, you will need to remember that we have embarked on a significant reform, economically and financially. That is yielding results, and we are seeing that results in the economic response to the last 2-3 years reforms. Leaving aside the oil growth, because the oil growth in terms of amounts pumped and exported will depend a lot on the decisions that are made by OPEC Plus, and the Ministry of Energy, obviously. The non-oil GDP is growing, and as per the Article 4 of IMF, which is the reference to the world, the non-oil GDP is going to grow at 2.9. We believe actually it is going to hit that number. So we don't see an impact. We are seeing actually real results happening. Key elements of the Vision 2030 program, such as the housing, is delivering actually more than expected. We targeted only in 2019 to provide about 200,000 housing projects. We are on target. So far, about 130,000 have been delivered to people. We have seen 90,000 already receiving their keys, and the rest are building. So we are seeing results. We are seeing the same on tourism. We are seeing the same on communication. We are seeing the same on transport. So there is actually, in the non-oil GDP, which is our target of diversification, we are seeing a momentum, and this is happening.
I mean, speaking of reforms, a lot of attention still on the IPO of Saudi Aramco. There was an understanding or some form of signaling that indicated that it could happen as soon as November. With the latest incident, does that mean that gets pushed back a little bit?
I mean, Saudi have always said, we are committed to the IPO, and the government will choose the right time. They will read the market and they will decide. Most likely it is going to happen in the next 12 months.
What about a plan for an international listing, or is the international listing going to happen here in the kingdom?
I mean, the listing is going to happen. The primary market is going to be Tadawul, as we have always said. We are still considering secondary market options, but the primary market for listing will be Tadawul.
A question on what's happening in the local stock market here, because we saw quite a bit of resilience after the attacks on the Saudi energy infrastructure. Some of the traders telling us that there could have been some support from government funds, like the Public Investment Fund, the PIF. Can you speak to that at all? Whether there are any mechanisms to help or serve as buffers?
I think you should look at the bigger picture in the market. A lot of reforms have happened across the economy, and if you look at and focus on the capital market, a lot of reform have happened. We now have joined the 3 international indices that have brought significant inflows into the market, and that brought with it also institutional investors who actually are able to assess the impact of any events without any emotion. So I think what you have seen in the market and the performance of the market and the reaction of the market to the recent events is showing that A, there is a confidence in the economy, B, institutional investors are making rational judgment. That rational judgment is actually confirmed by the announcement of last night when there is a confidence that there is actually an ability, a strong ability for the company, for Saudi Arabia to back on track very quickly and recover.
Sounds to me like a clear no to my question, but I'll let your answer speak for itself. Let me ask a closing question on the IMF, because they're saying or recommending that you be a little bit more reserved and pull back on your fiscal outlays. From a theoretical point of view, do you agree with that recommendation?
I think we agree totally that we need to be very prudent in our fiscal policy. We agree that achieving that is not necessarily by just cutting on your spending, but being very efficient. And we are doing significant efforts on our efficiency reforms. The latest is the government procurement law, the new government procurement law, which provides significant efficiency levers for the government. We are working through to make sure that every riyal that we spend goes even deeper and deeper into the economy. So that has an impact, that has an angle. So we are focusing on that. So if there is any less spending by the government, it would be because we are being more efficient. But we are continuing with the balancing of, one, the fiscal health of the kingdom, but also focusing on growth and making sure that we continue to support growth.
Minister, what would your message be to foreign investors around the world after the turbulence that we saw over the last 72 hours or so? I mean, it reverberated around the world what happened in the oil markets and arguably increased the geopolitical risk premium that has to be factored into a lot of asset classes. What would you say at this point?
I think that we should differentiate between two. I mean, if you talk about the debt investors, they should look at the strength of the Saudi balance sheet. I mean, we have a significant foreign reserves, 10 folds of what we have as a debt in the international market. So that alone should provide significant comfort. The Saudi Arabia have weathered significantly worse situations than what we are seeing now. And there is actually a very strong opportunities that is taking place in the economy. And the equity side, I think what we have seen is the opposite. In 2018, we have seen significant growth in FDI. And the first quarter, we have seen about 24% growth on FDI, despite the fact that internationally, globally, FDI have actually declined by about 15%. So despite all that is taking place, investors are seeing opportunities and coming in and investing, and that includes education, healthcare, and other sectors.
So with that being said, are you going to be issuing any additional bonds anytime soon?
We will, as planned. I think there is no change on our plan on the debt issuance.
Okay.